The buddy comedy has been a staple of American cinema since they first started making celluloid.
No, I don't like you. If I were a lion and you were a tuna, I would swim out in the middle of the ocean and freaking eat you!
Venom The Last Dance is not exactly breaking any new ground. You could go all the way back to the 1910s with Fatty and Buster Keaton as this dynamic duo, then go forward through time to Abbott and Costello, then the Lethal Weapon series, then all the way to Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz. This is a simple formula. Two characters with widely different personalities that are put in a room together or on the road or, say, on a case. Here, they must eventually put aside their differences to solve a problem, or they could just, learn the lesson of not trying to kill each other and become good friends. And that's really what the Venom franchise has pivoted towards in this third film. Drama in this series, it's largely gone the way of the dodo, as the movie focuses in more on just the goofy buffoonery of the two main characters, both of which are played by Tom Hardy. The story's even being stuck in a very, very common just template for a lot of buddy comedy films, the road trip. It's simple, and it can be found in anything from planes, trains, and automobiles to Toy Story.
You are a toy!
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
It's easy to force two characters that dislike one another into a scenario that requires teamwork when they have to get to a joint destination. The problem with Venom 3 is they left out one very important ingredient, namely the comedy. Comedy will always be subjective, but anyone can tell that half the jokes here, they're just lines left blank and then ADR'd in. Tom Hardy just needs to show up on set, say his lines, then later in a recording booth, he gets to come up with funny ad-libs for his other half. It makes everything feel very stilted with poor setups and payoffs and misdirects. The general foundations of jokes. And Venom and Brock, they're not exactly the strongest characters to bounce off one another. Most buddy films have a more relatable straight man, and then he bounces off a more wild, weird, and kind of irreverent personality. Brock and Eddie as this comedic duo, they've been together already far too long to still be butting heads in this way. It is ground already covered in those first two movies, and this film, it's failing to move that relationship forward in any way. For example, look at 21 Jump Street. This film, it's very unique because the characters, they start out already as close friends, but then they're pulled apart by the events of the movie where they're forced back into the cliques of their high school and back into types. This generates drama and conflict just on its own. The second film then resets to college, which again flips the script, where the college groups they're sorted into create these new angles on comedy, and it creates a new angle on their relationship. There is something new here. Each film is offering something distinctly different. Yet in Venom 3, Eddie and his symbiote, they're still acting as if they just met yesterday, and they've never gotten over their initial growing pains. And even worse, it makes them mostly just feel like they're having constant back and forths like petulant children who can't get over their differences. It's like the kids in the back of the car saying, "I'm not touching you," over and over again.
She's touching me. She's touching me.
I'm not touching you.
You're touching me.
Not touching.
Touching me.
It's more exhausting than it is entertaining. But do you want to know what's always entertaining and never exhausting? Well, watching this channel, of course, so be sure to like and subscribe.
He has got shit you have never seen.
Depressingly, I would say the funniest part of this film was completely unintentional. There's this scene where this character has this heartfelt flashback to the good times, and it's all to the tune of Maroon 5's Memories. It was played very straight-faced, but easily got the most laughs in my screening, so I guess it wasn't all a lost cause. You may be thinking, that's okay, the action's gonna save that. This is an action comedy after all. Well, let's pump the brakes on that optimism. I will throw the movie a bone and say that at least the action in this film, it is coherent. You can actually tell what's happening, and it doesn't look like a bunch of dark sludge being thrown at the screen. Yet most of the action is just Venom fighting this giant, fast-running crab monster that kind of resembles the alien from A Quiet Place, if I'm to be completely honest. This is the villain, by the way. It's nothing but a mindless beast, which offers nothing of substance to the conflict. There is a villain behind the scenes, a character called Null, who I thought was going to emerge for the big third act conclusion. But instead, he's just sitting in his chair like he's some sort of discount Thanos. He ends up being nothing but a shadow character, with an unsubstantial reason for even going after Venom in the first place. Apparently, Venom's like holding some sort of codex, and he needs it for some reason to like free himself, so he's trying to hunt down Venom with his giant crab monster. It's nothing, really. I mean, it's basically a MacGuffin inside Venom. Whatever.
Whatever?
Wow.
Whatever?
The rest of the action is just as disposable and forgettable. Even in the big symbiote smackdown conclusion, where everybody gets to have a symbiote, just like they were going for cheap at the clearance sale. And never mind that the first film made this big point that bonding with a symbiote is long and difficult and it's hard to find an exact match for two. The only action scene I'd say that had a hint of creativity is the horse chase from the trailer that ends with Brock and Venom separated down a river, trying to get back to each other before the military captures them. That's a unique setup, and it is fun to see Venom sort of hop between different animals, like a frog, I think, and a fish at one point. It's silly, but, there's at least creativity there. There's a spark of unique action potential. But it's short-lived. In fact, all action is short-lived in this movie. There's not much here. The screenwriters, they seem to have been given a directive to limit the amount of Venom as much as possible. Perhaps to, I don't know, maybe save money on visual effects. Who knows? That Venom's expensive. You can't just be using him all the time, all right? We gotta ration him. To accomplish this, there's a lot of techno-babble on why they can't become Venom anymore, which allows Tom Hardy to basically just wander around a desert in Las Vegas in his flip-flops for most of the movie. But don't let a little thing like, budget cuts get in the way of a good time. After a long played-out sequence in Vegas that, we've seen in a dozen other films and it's just been beaten to death, Brock and Venom run into Mrs. Chen, and Venom decides to fully transform finally so he can dance with her to ABBA. Great use of your Venom rations. Was this supposed to be heartfelt or funny or endearing? I don't know. Mostly it succeeded in being cringe-inducing to the point that I kind of wanted to sink through my theater chair. Now, why would Venom do this when he knows the crab spider creature hunting them will be able to instantly locate them? Was the dance that emotionally important? Did it really progress anything in the plot? Well, no, it had no emotional stakes, and it was just done kind of on a whim. Mostly exists so the writers have this excuse to move the plot along to the third act and just get things over with. And in this case, I'm not exactly complaining. In the end, I'm really at a loss on Sony's endgame with these thinly written bargain bin Spider-Man villain movies. The Venom franchise is the only one actually making money, and even then, I'm still confused who it's for. He's not exactly loyal to his source material as just this big bumbling goofball. He lacks the same cool, sinister villainy as the Spider-Man foe or the moral ambiguity when he played an anti-hero in the comics. As a result, I can't say I'm all that pumped or excited to have Venom and Spider-Man meet, even though clearly Sony's been really pushing for that for Spider-Man 4. My assumption would be that Peter gets the Venom symbiote left in the MCU, and he gets his black suit in Doomsday, and then meets up with Eddie Brock to trade some punches, and then take on Null in Spider-Man 4. I mean, that would sound like the most logical path with how they've set everything up. Yet, even the idea of Peter getting the symbiote, that's kind of undercut by the fact that this version of the character doesn't really corrupt the user or heighten their aggression or violent impulses. It kind of strips that story of all its potential. Given the nature of Marvel's current multiverse arc, if they were going to have these characters meet, now kind of would be the time to do it. Even though I do kind of wish they would just take a step back and make a really good street-level story with Daredevil or Kingpin. But Sony doesn't think that's going to make them $2 billion like last time, so you can probably scratch that idea. Instead, I'm kind of, mostly expecting them to go with the worst possible options. Hope for the best, but expect the worst kind of thing. The frustrating thing here is I can see a world where Venom can carry his own movie. There is the potential there. I can even see where this idea of Venom in a good superhero buddy comedy works. It's not hard to imagine. Deadpool and Wolverine just came out this year and utilized that concept to $1 billion success. It successfully did everything I mentioned before. It had two characters with vastly different personalities, forced to work together, and a comedy that really played up their differences in personality, and even the differences in the film franchises they both came from. But in the end, you still had it work where the two characters came together, where they had to learn to respect one another. Okay, maybe they didn't learn how to respect one another, but they at least learned how to tolerate one another. That's at least some development. That's more than we have here. It had that most important ingredient. It was actually funny. I could have forgiven, some poor action and not even really solid storytelling. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine, the story's nothing to write home about. But if I get good regular laughs, then that's all I'm really looking for. Yet, despite this new comedic tone, there were really just crickets chirping in my screening. Venom, he just feels like he's been stripped of everything that made him unique and interesting in the comics. And as a result, I'm left sitting here kind of hoping that this is The Last Dance. That's all I got for this review. If you guys think I'm dead wrong, let me know in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe. I will be back with more historical film flashbacks and modern movie analysis. So please, keep those reels turning. Thank you.